All right, well, there are certain days in our lives that become markers, right? There's the before and the after. There's the BC and the AD. There are those days that become stark reminders to us as well that we have sometimes forgotten some of the important issues of life. Because as life goes along, we can slip into lethargy. And it's easy to find ourselves majoring in the minors and minoring in the majors, those minor things of life, and inadvertently then crowding out the things that really matter. Sometimes it's easy to see those lines of demarcation that help open our eyes back to the significant. So we've been looking for the past several weeks at the theme of the new you, right? And I've been talking about taking 2026. What are you going to do with it? Is it just going to become another year? Are you going to make something significant out of it? Could it be the best year of your life? Can you make it one of the best years of your life? And so that theme begs the question, what is it that you want to work on in your life? Is there anything you are working on in your life? Now, Wesley would say, and I've said this, John Wesley, the founder of our church, would say that we can move into a place where our lives are perfect. Okay, not that we don't make mistakes, but that Wesley's understanding of perfection was that our hearts become pure, that every thought, every intention, every motive, every action flows out of a life of love. So if you've reached that point, God bless you, and I'm wasting your time. Okay. But if you haven't done, then I would hope you would allow to bubble up to the surface. What is it that you need to be? What is it that you are working on? Is there something in your life that you'd like to change? Be for the better. But honestly, we come up with a myriad of reasons why we have perhaps chosen not to engage with it. So many of you, most of you by now have heard that last week Betsy and I decided and announced that we'd begin writing the next chapter of our lives this summer as she and I will relocate and take on our new assignment in the Nashville area. In other words, we're going to retire as we understand it. So this is one of those days, this is one of those times for us. So I let my mind wander this week about the visual image from the life of Jesus about growth and about change and building a new you. And what came into focus were the words that Rob read for us. Jesus, as recorded there in Luke, the 4th chapter, Jesus says, if you want to build a tower, you got to first sit down and decide how much it's going to cost. You have to see if you have enough money to finish the job. If you don't finish the job, you might have started the job, but if you're not able to finish it, Jesus says, then all who would see that you have not finished it are going to laugh at you. They would say of you, of me, well, they began to build, but they weren't able to finish. So anyone here like to be laughed at? Well, okay, I guess then we can proceed with trying to embrace the words of and the parable of Jesus. So when Jesus uses the metaphor of building a tower, I trust we're aware that Jesus wasn't talking about building a tower. And by the way, we often think of Jesus as a carpenter, the son of a carpenter, but way back in seminary, and you don't, one of those things that you don't make a big deal out of, really those who understand Jesus' life and culture actually understood that Jesus was likely a stonemason. And that being a stonemason then would translate in today's vernacular to Jesus the architect, which may explain why Jesus uses so many architectural images and metaphors. As a stonemason, he would understand that a tower is built one stone at a time. And while he speaks of a tower he's actually talking about our lives and the journey that we're on as we all spin on this third planet from the sun. That if you want to build a tower, if you want to build a life that matters, if you want to build a life worth remembering, if the story that's to be told to you after your final breath matters, Jesus said you need to sit down and decide, am I willing to pay the price? So for some, the tower, the ladder implies, well, I want to be rich, I want to be famous, right? I want to have great wealth, I want to have power, I want to have happiness. It can also mean my ladder is I want to make a difference in the world. And as Gina mentioned, someone who worked for justice. Martin Luther King understood that his life was on the line. And so that could be your tower. I want to make a difference in the world. I want to embrace, I want to let people know that we're headed towards a climate catastrophe. Choose what you like. But so whatever and then you fill in the blank, whatever you decide is important, the reality is that sometimes we don't follow up on that. And so not to decide, as we've heard, is to decide. And while we, at one level, want the tower, we just don't want the work. We're not willing to take on the work needed to build that which we ourselves have deemed helpful, that which we have deemed to be important, that which we've deemed to be necessary. So these past couple of weeks, as I've kind of trying to direct our thinking towards what might I or what might we think about changing, it's based upon one very large assumption. And oh, don't we know about making assumptions? So the question I think all of us have to ask is, and we might not want to ask it, we might hate to ask it, but let's ask it anyway. What do you want out of life? What ladder are you climbing? So have you ever cared so much about someone that you found yourself wanting a better life for them than they seemingly did? And you did everything in your power you could to help them. But what you experienced, the reality is that no matter how much you loved them, no matter how much you cared for them, that you could not decide for them the life they would have. And so you can be here this morning, out there later on in the week, and I can talk and we can talk and all day and all night, and we could try to provide the infrastructure in the community to help someone succeed and excel as much as possible. But you have to want it, or you'll never have it. So how do we get it? How do we come into it? Well, on that beautiful Tuesday, beautiful 50 degrees, it's like, really? Just change this fast? So I was out with Faithful Fido, and because we walked the same place like all year round at night, I've come to, we've experienced some people who, threw the dog, and he has two dogs, and Asher's all lit up at night, and so when his dogs see Asher's light, they sit and they bark at the house until he lets them out, and so we come out, and so we've developed this friendship. We see life at points pretty differently, but we've had some very meaningful conversations. And so he let me know that his son has more or less moved in with his girlfriend, and he said, I'm lonely. He said, and he's been divorced for several years now, and now all of a sudden, kid is gone. Said the dogs are good, but they're just not filling a need in my life. I said, well, what are you going to do about it, Frank? I'll call him. He said, well, I'm thinking I'll just somehow I'll put it out into the universe and let the universe, take care of it. I said, well, not sure how this is going to work out for you. I said, what's the universe supposed to do? And I said, and I know, I mean, he doesn't want to do the online thing, and he's not a bar guy. I said, but don't you need to do something? So we had a good conversation. But I was struck by how we live in a time where some people are comfortable about talking about having the universe having intention and consciousness. But at the same time, an individual like that might not think that God would care at all about his life. And that's some of the conversation that we had, that God could be intimately concerned about the concerns of his life. Because no, the universe can't give you the life you want. You have to decide. We need to step back and look at our lives and assess where we are. And we begin by asking, well, what kind of tower have I built so far? And it might be when you step back, you realize, ooh, this really isn't the tower that I want. And if that's the case, if you were to do that hard work and the timely work of stepping back and going, you know what, this isn't who I want to be. This isn't what I want to be working towards. My life is not reflecting what I do want it to be. It's better to cut bait now rather than to wait. See, if you're going to build a life, you need to sit down first, Jesus said, and decide what you want to be remembered for. What will be your legend? What will be your legacy? And the reality is we don't know how long we have to build a tower. We don't have any idea. You may think you know, but you don't. You may think you have plenty of time. But the only day we know we have is the day we're in. So what are you going to do? What are the choices that you're making in life right now? So on the faith side, there are those who say, well, I don't need to do anything, right? Because I'm trusting in God. That was Frank's understanding. Frank was like, well, I'm going to sit back and the universe is going to take care of me. And there are those on the faith side that say, well, I'm just trusting Jesus to bring my life, together. To which Jesus chimes in, if you want to build a life into a legacy, you got to sit down and decide, are you willing to count the cost of what it will take? So I've heard commentators, and you probably have too, you talk about, your Michael Jordans or your Kevin Bryant, who said that, there's likely people who are more talented, than the Michael Jordans of the world, but they didn't have the drive that he had. He was legendary for being the first one at practice and being the last one, to leave. And for some reason, my mind went, and I love the Wizard of Oz, and for some reason, my mind went to, the Cowardly Lion, where he goes, what makes the Hottentot so hot, and what puts the ape in apricot, and what have they got that they ain't got? And they go, courage! And it's like, yeah. And so for some of us, what is it that they ain't got? What is it that they've got that I ain't got? Well, maybe it's determination, right? Because it's easy to lack determination, the will to work hard. I know, two women I've worked with over the years, it's like a tale of two cities. The one, does everything she can, to take every advantage of every opportunity, and she goes looking for it. And while there's been huge setbacks in her life, she has clawed her way back. And then there's the other one who just, life is always bad, and I can't do this and I can't do that. It's just, what's the difference? I really don't think there's a lot of difference between the two of them, but one has determination. One has decided, I am going to make my life work no matter what. So decide what you want. Determine what it takes. What will it cost you? Well, are you willing to pay the price to build a tower that is your life? So I mentioned last week that I love my parents in every way except for the lungs that they gifted me with. So I have something called alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. And so when you can't spell what you've got, that's not good. Okay. So I have a pulmonologist. That's something else you don't want to have to say, It's good to have a GP, but you don't want to have a pulmonologist. So upon learning that I had this thing that's 16 syllables long, so I walked into my pulmonologist. This was the one, I have a different one now because he retired, but I loved him. So I walked into his office. He specializes in people whose lungs are really struggling. And so I see like walkers and oxygen canisters all over the place. So I'm thinking like Ebenezer Scrooge, when he asked about the fate of Tiny Tim. Good Spirit, are these the things that will take place? Or only might take place? So that was my question to the pulmonologist. Is that the road I have to go down, or are there some things I can do about it? And he said, well, there's two things, Kurt, that you can do. The first is I'm going to start giving you this medicine, and that's critical for you. So the other thing is, you said, you need to work your lungs like you're training for a steeplechase. So I did, so I got active. I was really active before too, but I was just like, okay, now I'm going to get more. So when I shared this part of my journey with someone years later, I actually had someone say, because why do you exercise all the time? It's like I said, why are you working so hard? Don't you have faith? God will take care of you? And I said, I'm working so hard because of my faith. I believe God has called me to a lifelong service to the church, and if I'm going to be faithful to my calling, I need to do my part. I need to consider the cost. I need to look at the tower that's in front of me. I don't expect God to sprinkle pixie dust on me and give me a hall pass on my lungs like I'm getting out of class at school. So some of you know, if you're going to be a great teacher, you got to work at it. If you're going to be a great administrator, you got to work at it. An artist, a therapist, a parent, a doctor, a scientist, a neighbor, a spouse, a partner, an auto mechanic. It don't come easy. You can be mediocre at any of those, but if you're going to be great, you got to work at it. It just doesn't happen. You have to decide, is there something in your life worth more than the temporary pleasures that are trying to wring your life dry? So I don't know what's holding you back, but I bet you do. See, there are some things here and now that just keep you from cashing in, that you cash in on your present at the cost of your future. Guess it was a musical this week, because I remembered one of my first musicals I attended as a kid over at Belvedere was Music Man. Any of us remember that? Yeah, of course we do, yeah. Professor Harold Hill said, all week long, your River City boys will be frittering away. I say, your young men will be frittering away. They're noontime, supper time, chore time too. Get the ball in the pocket, never mind getting the dandelions pulled or the screen or patch or the beefsteak pounded. Never mind pumping any water till your parents are caught with a cistern empty on a Saturday night, and that's trouble. You usually got lots and lots of trouble. Yeah. See, every time you choose to cash in on the momentary, temporary pleasures, the momentary distractions, you do so at the cost of your future. And then when your life doesn't work out, we've got all the excuses. We've got all the reasons, and we can point our fingers everywhere but at ourselves. So perhaps you're like many who find that there are so many things you want in the moment that are at war with what you want for a lifetime. So Jesus says, you got to first see if you have enough to finish the job, enough resolve, enough courage, enough determination, if you have a willingness to sacrifice to finish the tower. So one more note, if I may. Jesus goes on to say, if you can't finish the tower, then all who see your failure will laugh at you. And I find that disturbing. And honestly, I couldn't think of a corollary in my life. That's what we're supposed to do as preachers. We're supposed to figure out how, I could not think of, maybe I think of one district superintendent who hoped I would fail. I don't know if he would have laughed. He might have been happy. But I couldn't think of a time people would want me. I don't know, maybe I've just been surrounded by really nice people. But I couldn't think of a time when someone would laugh if I didn't succeed. But what that aspect of the story reminded me of was the role of others. See, one of the things that I read and hear over and over again are people who are starting out on something. They're looking at the tower, they're looking at the ladder. And it's easy to get started, but to stay going, that's the difficult part, right? And the gym is the easiest one. I go there, and so, but I think just one we all understand. I mean, that's the one that's made people make fun of, either that or dieting, right? Oh, you started, but you can't keep going. But what we hear about is the importance of a friend. The importance of a friend coming along with us and walking beside us in our journey, being a part of our journey. And why is that important? Well, I think there are several reasons, but among them is it adds a level of accountability. See, when we bring others into our self-improvement project, we open up ourselves to them and say, hey, I want to let you know I'm building a tower. They go, what? So, well, then you can explain to them, it's really not a tower I'm building, but I'm trying to build a part of my life. And it's just in the beginning phases. But I've started. Will you share that project with me? Will you share my building project with me? I've got plans. And I'm inviting you into it, and I want and hope that you'll be a part of my project. And at that point, you are acknowledging to someone else, I'm ready to build a new me. That the change you're hoping for always begins with you, the new you. But so many times we fail to realize we can't do it on our own. Remember, even Jesus sent his disciples out in twos, right? So last week I talked about my experience of getting ready for my first triathlon as it related to swimming. If you wonder how that went, just think Titanic, okay? But triathlons involve 3 disciplines: swimming, biking, and running. I was confident if I didn't drown, I would do okay on the bike. But the running, well, the only difference between my ability to swim and my ability to run at that point was I was pretty sure that there was no way I would die running, which I wasn't real sure I wouldn't die swimming. So I knew I needed some help with that. So when I first got into this, I was at the Wheaton Sports Center, and there are all kinds of like crazy good athletes there. I mean, there's just amazing environment to work in, or to be active in. And there I met a man named Gary. Okay. So Gary introduced me to running, long distance running, you might say. Gary ran in the Leadville 100. Now, that would have meant about as much to me then as it means to you now. What's the Leadville 100? It is about a day and a half race, 15,000 feet. That's, in case you know, that's 3 miles of elevation change. And if you finish under 20, if you finish under 30 hours, you get a small buckle. But if you finish under 25, you get the big buckle. Okay. And Gary had gotten a buckle, and he loved to tell the story about he was just so close, to finishing, and I think he did the 30 hours, which is still insane. It's just remarkable. And he got lost. He missed it because he's finishing in the dark. You get a headlamp, but no one can help you, and the trail isn't very well marked. And so he realized finally he was off course, and then he finds his way back on. And now in the course of a 30-hour race, he finished with like a minute, to spare. But I still worship the guy for his running. I mean, it's just insane. So I'm like, okay, and we'd gotten to know each other, just really from hanging out, and seeing each other in the locker room. And as I said, he was this runner. So I told him, I said, I'm going to do this triathlon. I think I'm about 3 months away. And he says, okay, so what you need to do is you need to get started on a treadmill. It was winter. It's like this outside. Well, I said, I hate treadmill. He said, that don't matter. You got to start. So 30 minutes a day, he said, text me, because we didn't see each other all the time. He says, you text me, all right, that you did your 30 minutes on a treadmill. So 30 minutes on a treadmill. So, Gary, I did, day 1, great. So we're going along, and somewhere along the way, I can't remember, but I think I may have texted him, Gary, day 6. He said, no, it was only day 5. I'm like, come on now, we don't need to get picky about these things. So you may have heard this too. so runners, they'll talk about a runner's high. You ever hear that phrase, runner's high? Okay. Well, it's safe to say I have run thousands of miles, and because I know that because you're supposed to change your shoes every 250 miles, and I went through 10 or 12 pairs of shoes. That runner's high was quite elusive for me. In fact, I can honestly say I experienced it one time. We could take a trip right now. I could take you to this area. It was about 2 miles from our house, where I felt it for about 100 yards. I thought, oh, this is what they're talking about. I never had it again. You see, it wasn't the runner's high that kept me going. It was the desire to get and stay healthy because, as the American Lung Association tells us, when you can't breathe, life is no fun. But I always remember running my first marathon. It was down in Indianapolis, 26.2 miles. That's what the marathon is. It was a long day. I came in at 5 hours, 45 minutes, and 28 seconds, but who's counting? So, no runner's high, of course, but I kept putting one foot in front of the other. And after about 5 hours and 45 minutes, I rounded that final corner, and I could hear the music and the crowd, and I started to get emotional. And as I crossed the finish line, I started to cry. And I really couldn't stop for some time. And I didn't want to stop because all that work had paid off. I had properly built one tower in my life. Triathlons and my lungs have taught me a great deal about life and informed and shaped my life and my discipline in many ways. So I wish the highest ideals for myself come easy, but they don't come easy. And I realize it's easy to become the lesser version of me. So it's hard work to become the best version of myself. And I continue to work on it. You know, too, it don't come easy. God will not build a tower for you, but God will give you the power and the strength and the courage and the resolve and the faith to build that tower. That is your life. Lord, I hope that those short of perfection will take the time to say, Lord, what is it in my life that I need to be working on? It is easy, as Gina said, to not know what we don't know. Your Spirit can reveal that to us. Those people that we choose to journey with in life can help us. But I think it's fair to say, Lord, that we all need your help to become more of who you would have us to be. And so whatever ladder we're choosing to climb in life, help us. We are appreciative of those who journey beside us, who hold our hand and who give us helpful words of instruction for that which we do not know. So bless us, O Lord, as we take our separate journeys, but we also journey together as a community of faith. In the name of the Christ we pray. Amen.